Is there an alternate universe where Dave Aranda is the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide right now? Yeah, there kind of is. This is the twilight. So, Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. We're almost to Friday. I am your host, Cam Stewart. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. One more game on the regular season schedule for the Baylor men's basketball team. We're going to talk more about what is going to be going into that game, tomorrow's show, but there is some controversy surrounding their opponent, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. We're going to get into that in just a minute. And some articles coming out yesterday that Nick Saban almost called it quits a little bit earlier than he actually did. And could that have paved the way for Dave Aranda to be the head coach at Alabama? Not as weird as you might think. And more awards for Scott Drew. We can't give him enough awards. Truly, we can't. That's all coming up in today's show. Of course, it is March. We are getting to the nitty-gritty of the games that really matter in the basketball schedule. And for Baylor, it's just one more regular season game before they and the rest of the teams head off to Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. And that game is Saturday at 5 against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Now, there's plenty to play for in this game. When you look at the Big 12 standings, Baylor is there at 11-6, and both Kansas and Texas Tech are right behind them at 10-7. So if Baylor does not beat Texas Tech on Saturday and Kansas gets a customary win to close out the regular season, then those are three teams at 11-7, with two teams behind Baylor right now would be tied, and they would each be 1-1 against each other, or Baylor would be 1-1 against each of the two of them. So it could get nuts. All that to say, there's still plenty to play for, and those top four are the ones that get the bye in the Big 12 conference tournament. So not just a throwaway game for Baylor as they head to a tough environment in Lubbock on Saturday for a team that's reeling just a little bit in Texas Tech. You know, they haven't had their full starting five out there clicking for a while. Warren Washington is back for them, which is a huge lift. But one guy who has not played is Tyeron Lindsay. He has not made the trip, as a matter of fact, for their last two games. It was West Virginia on Saturday, and on Tuesday it was Oklahoma State. And he did not make the trip for either of them. And when the media asked Grant McCasland about that after Tuesday's game against Oklahoma State, it was an interesting answer from the former Scott Drew assistant.
The top two teams in our league, the teams that are 1-2 in the standings, that are in the top 8 in the country, that are winning our league, have the two best defenses in the country. And so there's been an emphasis that what we're going to do defensively, everybody has to be all in on it. And so we're measuring who wants to guard and who wants to be about defense this time of year. And if you want to, you're going to be playing and be a part of the team. And if you're not, then it's not going to work.
Yes, weird indeed. No injury or anything like that to Tyeron Lindsay. He just said, we play defense here. That's what's going to get us to the championship level. And by saying just that is implying that Tyeron Lindsay is not playing defense. He says, we're going to play the guys that are going to get us there. And it was a shock answer of, not like, oh, he's a little banged up or, no comment even. He says, we're here to play defense. And basically, this kid doesn't play defense. And that is, it's surprising. I know for Tech fans, it's confusing, but I think in the long run, while not great for the player, probably good for the program in terms of, not to say that this kid is, a locker room cancer or anything like that. I have no idea, but he's saying these are what the championship teams are doing. These are what the top teams in our conference are doing, and we can get there. We're not that far off right now, and I'm in year number 1, so we're going to set the standard of what this is going to take. So I'm guessing there's more to this. There's more fire to this smoke, I guess you could say, of just other than this kid just doesn't play great defense. So we'll see. I know he got into some hot water. Tyeron Lindsay got into some hot water with the Tech fans earlier this year, and what ends up being a really silly thing. He took a picture and put it on Instagram of like his Tech jersey on the court, and he's sitting in one of the courtside seats, and his feet are on the jersey. And they're like, "Oh, he's stepping on the uniform, blah blah blah." It was a big thing on social media, and he put out a post that was like, "Definitely didn't mean that. Sorry about that." He seems like a good enough kid. He actually posted on his Instagram yesterday that he was at the South Plains food bank and saying like loves helping out there. So it maybe it is. It's just specifically in that Baylor game is the one that I saw him play in up close, and we'll look at that. But the numbers do not reflect well on his defense. His box plus minus is 6.2, which is not great. And what that means is it's like WAR in baseball of your production above the average replacement. And so when it comes to defensive box plus minus, that is how many points is the other team going to get when you're on the court versus when the average player is on the court. So a negative defensive box plus minus or very little, that's good. Specifically the negative, right? That's what you want to see. He's not in the negative. He's very much in the positive, 6.2. So that means for every 100 possessions, if Tyeron Lindsay is out on the court for those 100 possessions, he is going to allow the other team to score 6 more points than if the average player was out there for 100 possessions. So it's not a great look. And his playing time has gone down. He's only a sophomore, transferred in from Georgia, and all of those production numbers went down. When you look at the minutes per game specifically, he was playing 20 minutes a game for Georgia last year. He's down to about 6 minutes per game for Texas Tech. He only scored 6 a game for Georgia, and that's just under 3 now at Tech. And when he played against Baylor, he played 12 minutes, just 2 points, plus 1 actually. So he wasn't a minus player in the plus minus, but had 4 fouls in 12 minutes. So clearly, that's one of those things where the plus minus numbers can probably lie a little bit in that he comes up on the positive side, but he also committed 4 fouls in 12 minutes. So that's telling me that he's either way out of shape, which I don't believe is true, and more likely that he's out of position defensively. That's where you see that a lot is the personal foul numbers, not just in the plus minus. He has not played since the 27th in that lopsided loss to Texas, where they were down 25 in the second half. He has not scored in a game since TCU on February 20th. So in fact, the 2 games since then, which were at UCF and then that home game to Texas, he played a combined 3 minutes, and the only stat he put on the stat sheet were 2 personal fouls in that game against UT. So it's definitely been a downhill slope to basically being benched to completely being benched and not making the trip with his teammates. So will be really interesting to see if he plays against Baylor on Saturday. I think it would be just our luck as Baylor fans if he does come in and he's motivated as hell to be back in the game and he goes off and has his best game of the year. I'm not holding out hope for that. I know the Tech fans aren't either, but who knows? That could happen. But interesting to see, again, because there is a lot to play for Tech in this game when it comes to the Big 12 conference tournament and just getting another quad 1 victory. We see how important those are when it comes to Selection Sunday, and they have a lot going on around that team right now. I'll tell you about a lot going on. How about these for a lot? Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die. I'm talking about your ride alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to that peak performance. Anything you're looking for, like superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, all that, speed, power, or style, it all gets into eBay Motors. eBay Motors got you covered for all of them. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride. I know, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber. You are not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, and exclusions do apply. Usually I'm very rooted in reality here on Locked On Baylor. That's something I'm big into, reality, and not just the movie with Sydney Sweeney. I don't love going into hypothetical scenarios, but today I'm going to break that mold a little bit because this one fascinates me. I'm going to do the Rod Serling Twilight Zone. What if I told you that Dave Aranda was the Alabama Crimson Tide head coach? Was that a good Rod Serling? I don't know. But it's weird to think of now, right? Alabama's the number one job in college football. At the worst, the second best job in college football, for if there are any bitter Ohio State fans listening. Like, it is the top of the top, especially from what Nick Saban built. 9 SEC championships, 6 national championships in 15 years. He calls it quits, stuns everybody back in January, right after the college football playoff semifinal, when he says, I'm done, I'm out of college football. And initially he had said that it was because of the NIL and this ever-changing world. And I get that, it's not going away. And that's part of the game now. But as someone who's almost 70 years old and has accomplished everything you can accomplish in college football, like that makes sense that he just wants to coach ball and not do any of that other stuff. And then we find out in an interview yesterday that he also didn't like the way his players reacted after a loss, like throwing down their helmets. Apparently that's a new thing at Alabama. I've seen that for a while, but that was the last straw for Nick Saban. And also in that interview, which is why I'm talking about it, is he had said that he came into his AD's office, Greg Byrne, after the 2022 season and said, hey, I might be done. Like, I'm like, not right now, but like, I'm coming to an end here. And so Byrne already knew, like, maybe I need to start looking at head coaches. And there are also rumors circulating that Saban said something similar after 2021, which makes it very interesting. So then I play in the hypotheticals in my head of what if he did say it in 2021 or 2022? Who else would Alabama be looking at? Because Kalen DeBoer, the guy they got right now, would not have been on their radar, right? And so I think back to the 2021 season, and there were 2 really hot coaches, like young coaches who were just getting their first crack at a head coaching job that were getting interest. And one of them was getting major interest. And that guy was Dave Aranda. Remember, it wasn't that long ago. Like we were kind of clutching pearls over here of whether he was going to go to LSU, which became available. That was the place he came from as the defensive coordinator. Notre Dame was open. Washington, who eventually hired DeBoer, liked Aranda a lot. Who else was open? Cincinnati, was that one open? I don't know, but there were a bunch of big head coaching jobs that year. Florida was open. Nebraska got open the next year. Oregon was the other one I was thinking of that were looking at Dave Aranda. There were quite a few that were trying to interview him and get him in the door. And so if Nick Saban retires at the end of 2021 with all these other coaching openings, I'm wondering where on the power rankings is Dave Aranda? Because it's right at the top. If you're making a short list after the 2021 season, almost everyone would have Dave Aranda at the top of that list. He's young. He just took a team from 2-7 to the number 5 ranking in the country at the end of the season, a Big 12 championship, a Sugar Bowl championship, and was one play here or there away from the playoff. It was this remarkable, revelation, renaissance of this program that was not even ranked to start the season, to have all of these accolades at the end of it. Of course, everyone was in on Dave Aranda. And Alabama would have been no different. Now, the folly of this argument is the other guy who was really hot at the time was Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker, who did coach under Saban at Alabama. So that probably would have been the number one guy on their list. But honestly, Aranda could not have been much farther than the number two guy on their list. And that is interesting to me because I think about their head coaching search now, and Kalen DeBoer was not number one on their list. No way. Kalen DeBoer is a good coach from what we can see, but the jury is still out a little bit. He's won everywhere he's been, so I don't want to say like he doesn't have a resume. And he took Washington to the national championship game, but that was year 2. And like Alabama is a whole different animal. The SEC is a whole different animal. And so we don't know if he's a great coach, but we know he's probably a good one. I can almost guarantee you, like Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian were definitely higher than Kalen DeBoer on that list. Like proven Power 5 head coaches who are doing great jobs right now and had coached under Saban in that kind of offensive coordinator rehab that Saban had going there for years at Alabama. Definitely those two guys were ahead of Kalen DeBoer in the pecking order for sure. And they both got extensions. Sark got a huge one. So like, no doubt those were the guys they were looking at. So I say that to say Aranda might've been second on that list, but they had to dip into probably their 4th or 5th guy this time around with the same prestige, right? 2 years later. So after 2021, they absolutely could have poached Dave Aranda 1,000%. And it's just wild to look back on now with what has happened since then, with Aranda kind of on life support with this program, that he could be, getting he could be doing junior days for the Alabama Crimson Tide right now, which is just incredible to me. But it's really not that far-fetched when you see that Saban looked to possibly retire after 21 and then definitely thought about it after 22, which let's play the 2022 game. Baylor has a disappointing season at 6-7, but if you're looking at it with not as great a coaching carousel going into last season, you're thinking, well, he did go 6-7, sure, but that's what Baylor is, blah, blah, blah. And he's 1 year removed from this. We know what he's capable of. They just had a bad year. Their quarterback got hurt at some point in the season and missed half a game. They're justifying it, right? But you look at who were the head coaching options going into the 23 season. So after that 2022, 6-7 for Baylor. And it was not like great pickings for guys who were out there. GJ Kinney was out there, but it was like Dion, Coach Prime. Alabama ain't making that big a jump. They're not taking that big a risk with Deion Sanders, right? So that's probably not it. Luke Fickell, maybe he's a Midwestern guy, but sure. And the number one guy who was on there was Matt Rule. And would Alabama have gone after Matt Rule? Maybe. That wouldn't have been a bad hire. I really rate Matt Rule as a really good college football coach. So if you include Aranda in that pack, he's no worse than 3rd. Like, he was a better, more secure option than Deion Sanders. And if you want to argue he isn't anymore, I'll hear that out. But he certainly was. And so we were really not that far off. According to this interview that Saban did with ESPN, we were not that far off from a Dave Aranda, Alabama Crimson Tide marriage. And they do wear crimson, which I made the mistake on last time, which was silly by me. But like, at least he would have done interviews there. Oregon and LSU, those are absolutely powerhouses, and it was wild that Aranda didn't entertain those more. But Alabama's Alabama. There's 2 or 3 college football programs in today's day and age that just stick out above the rest. I'll give it 4. Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State in their current status. I know Notre Dame is up there too. The Clemson people will be arguing they're up there too. Most years, yes, but those 4 are ones that you would leave anywhere for. especially Alabama and Ohio State. You would leave anywhere for those. And so we were not that far away from seeing Dave Aranda, our daddy Dave, coaching at Alabama. Guys, I cut the cable cord years ago. Okay. That's because I found something called Amazon Fire TV and the Fire Stick. And I literally don't leave home without it. It is an absolute godsend for me. That's how I watch all my TV. And now they are sponsoring us here on Locked On Baylor. Fire TV is your destination for sports. Okay. Live games, highlights, in-depth analysis, anything you would watch. Not even just on TV. It's available on Amazon Fire TV, okay? It offers amazing viewing experiences with their smart TVs, as well as the Fire Stick that you can plug into your existing TV. That is so easy. I mean, you just plug it right in. It's literally 2 plugs, and that is it. And it's got millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live television, too. So whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which is coming up, March Madness, which is even sooner, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Okay. It recently created a Fire TV channels that delivers a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college references as well. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos, everything you watch on TV and on YouTube, you can find on our Fire TV channels and Fire TV and Alexa devices. So if you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you really should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Let's do that again to make sure I get the right amount of W's. www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. Well, from one Baylor coach to the other, from Dave Aranda to Scott Drew, more awards coming in for our man, Scott Drew. It was just announced yesterday that he was named a guardian of the game, which I think is really a cool way to put it. That's a cool name for the award. And that is headed up by the National Association of Basketball Coaches Guardian of the Game Award for leadership. Scott Drew, sorry, I should explain the award first. The awards are presented each year at the NABC convention to NABC member coaches, administrators, and contributors who embody the 5 core values of leadership, service, education, advocacy, and inclusion. Let me tell you, no one does that more than Scott Drew. So if this ain't the first time they've handed it out, then this is overdue. This is about time. Scott said, it's a great privilege to be named a guardian of the game. Basketball has meant so much to my family and so many others. So it has been a true joy to be able to pass along that love for the game to the next generation and beyond. God has given us a great platform to be leaders at our institutions and across the nation through the game of basketball. So to receive this honor alongside some great coaches and contributors is a true blessing and honor. And I'm really using this as a way to just pump the Scott Drew tires, because we all know it, and it's great when the nation gets to see it too. Scott Drew is such a blessing to this university, and possibly the biggest blessing this school has ever gotten. I won't get into exactly the rebound because you've heard the story before, but there was no worse situation in college basketball history to walk into than what he did in 2003. And what I really appreciate about Coach Drew from the basketball sense is every time we get media notes from Matt Roberts, the basketball SID, a lot of these stats and the run of dominance under Drew is starting in 2009, because that's when he got the first full allotment of scholarships, was the 08-09 season. Think about that. He went 6 seasons or 5 seasons without having a full allotment of scholarships. And one of those seasons, by the way, they made the tournament. Like, that's incredible. They made the tournament out of the Big 12, and they didn't even have all the scholarship players that every other team had. And everything is from 09. The numbers are just dominant. We talked about it with the UT record. It is 24-10 after 09. They've made the postseason every season since then. They've won 20 games, like 10 of those seasons. So it's just a true testament in the basketball sense of what Scott Drew has done for this university. But we all know that it goes so far beyond the court. So many of us have Scott Drew stories. If you bump into him around Waco, which happens a lot. I've bumped into him at Barris a few times, which is a local Waco haunt, one of my favorite Italian places. He's the nicest guy. And if you meet him once, he'll remember you, and you'll never feel like you're interrupting him, even though a lot of the times you are, because he is just such a genuine, nice guy. What you see on TV is what you get in real life. And so anytime Scott Drew is being awarded something like this, it goes without saying that it's deserved. But for us as Baylor fans, it's a great opportunity to show the nation the Scott Drew that we know. So cheers up for Scott Drew, for everything that you do for us, whether it's a tough night at the Foster Pavilion or more likely than not, a very fun night for Baylor fans at the Foster Pavilion. We so appreciate him and his staff and what he has done for our great university. And long may he be the head coach of the Baylor Bears for a lot longer than just this year. ACC folks, just remember that. Anyway, drop down in the comments below what you thought about that Twilight Zone theory. I'm telling you, it's not that out there. And what you're thinking about the women and the men taking on some big games. The women will take on the winners of the UH game today. It's UH versus someone, and they will play at 11 a.m. on Friday. So we're going to preview that game tomorrow. We're also going to preview Saturday's game against Texas Tech, and then we'll have a post game on Saturday night for that. So anyway, get involved down in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends about it. We'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.